Hey there, Happy New Year. Welcome to SI Now. It is Tuesday, January 3rd, and I'm Maggie Gray. Coming up, Andrew Brandt will join me to discuss the latest firings and vacancies in the National Football League, and we'll take a deeper look at Ohio State's football future after the Buckeyes were shut out by Clemson in the Fiesta Bowl. But first, the NFL playoffs are set. Let's talk about the biggest storylines with NBC Sports Radio host Seth Everett. And Seth, let's start here. The New York Giants. They were celebrating their win over Washington with a quick trip to Miami, and because we live in a social media age, well, now the whole world knows that the receiving corps was partying with Justin Bieber and Trey Songz until the wee hours of Monday morning. Now, that's just a regular Sunday night for you, Seth, we know. And the Giants weren't violating any team rules, but partying on South Beach may not suggest you're too dialed in. Do the Giants receivers deserve criticism for the trip to Miami?
Well, there's going to be criticism either way. And unfortunately, because it's the NFL, it doesn't matter if you're playing in New York, Jacksonville, you can be playing in Lincoln, Nebraska. That's not going to make a difference. I think the issue here is their taste in music. Justin Bieber? No. In all seriousness, the Giants do things throughout their history that open up to criticism. This group has been criticized. They were the worst 10-win team in the league. When they came out and they got into a position where they were finally beating the Cowboys twice and they were making the playoffs, even that came with a loss, and that came with the criticism. All I have to say is, even if the Packers win, these guys have to play well, or else there'll be a host of more criticism.
Yeah, I think the true crime is Timberlands on a boat. It's just not a good look, Seth. Of course, recent history has been
That just means they have no friends. That just means they have no friends, because if they had real friends, somebody would say, dude, fix that.
You don't wear Timberlands on the boat. We know that. Of course, the Giants, they've won 2 games in Lambeau on their way to 2 Super Bowl victories in the past. If this Giants team is going to leave Green Bay with another win, how are they going to do it?
Well, if they do, their defense is going to be able to neutralize Aaron Rodgers. The key to the New York Giants has been their defense. It is a much improved defense. It is what Jerry Reese, their general manager, worked on in the offseason. They wanted to establish a new front seven. They wanted to make improvements in the secondary, and they did that. Aaron Rodgers is the league MVP, and you're not going to be surprised if he picks them apart, and that's just what the Green Bay Packers do. I think that the New York Giants are in this position where I look at it as very similar to the Super Bowl years where they were playing with house money. Unfortunately, this team doesn't have the same talent level as those ball clubs. There's really a minimal running attack. They're not going to be able to balance anything. If the Packers want to attempt any kind of a blitz package, they're going to get to Eli Manning. And when he's under pressure, he makes mistakes. It's just been the mantra of the New York Giants. They beat the teams they have to beat. I don't know that they have to beat Green Bay.
Okay, so the Packers, they have Aaron Rodgers. As predicted, they've run the table, finishing off the season with 6 straight wins. What's changed during this run, Seth?
Well, Aaron, I mean, you talk to people in Milwaukee, and we had a great guest on our NBC show who basically said that this was really on Aaron Rodgers. There was no injury. This was not a situation where he was anything other than a guy who had come in and, let's face it, he was making his own mistakes. There was a stretch when the Packers were 4-6 that Aaron Rodgers was going to the podium after games, shrugging his shoulders and saying, I don't have answers for you. There are people who lost their fantasy leagues because Aaron Rodgers had a 4-week stretch where he couldn't execute to his level. That has been rectified. He goes in as the hottest quarterback, including Tom Brady, the hottest quarterback in the sport. And considering the fact that you're talking about Matt Ryan and Dak Prescott as the best the NFC has to offer, you have to seriously consider the Packers.
Seth, we all feel real bad for you about your fantasy team. Which NFC team is the biggest threat to the Cowboys?
You asked. I said Sunday night, I said that it was Atlanta. I just think that Matt Ryan, he's got the nickname Matty Ice. There might be a time when you do it. I just look at the Packers as being a different team if they go on the road. So if we're going to move ahead, the idea that can Atlanta win in Dallas, I think so. I'm not sold that Green Bay can win in Atlanta. So based on that logic, I think the best credible threat are the Falcons. I want to see what happens with the week off. I want to see what happens with the Falcons, how convincing they look going in. This is not that I don't believe in the Cowboys. I'm not a Cowboy hater, although 90% of the country is. It's not about trying to find the flaws with with Dallas. It's that, they're going to try to have this two-pronged attack. They're going to try to let the run set up the pass, and the Cowboys play their game. If you take them out of their rhythm, they can be beat. The Giants, I saw it twice.
We'll see if anyone can really be a threat to Dallas. We haven't talked about the AFC at all, so let's talk about it. The biggest threat to the Patriots in the AFC is who, Seth?
When you look at the Patriots, I think they are in a class by themselves. I have said that all along. I respect Kansas City. I have respected what the Chiefs and Alex Smith have done. But going into Foxborough, I would think if they played 10 games in Foxborough, the Chiefs would win one of them. That doesn't mean I don't think there's any chance. I just don't see it. The team I'm very interested in seeing is Pittsburgh. If we followed Pittsburgh's season, when they got off to that fast start, they talked so much smack. They were so excited. That team had so much arrogance. And if you've noticed, weeks 14 and 15, I'm not going to give their 16th game, the sub game against the Browns. If you look at the Steelers against the Baltimore Ravens, the reality is they seemed to put the package together. And despite the criticisms that Terry Bradshaw was giving, I like their coaching. I like what the Steelers have done. Again, I'm not naive. I'm going to say it's New England. But if there is a credible threat, it's the Steelers.
Seth Everett, you can hear him on NBC Radio. Seth, great to talk with you. Thanks so much.
Good to see you, Maggie.
You too.
Terrell Pryor's style of play, I don't know if this is considered a style of play, but is freakishly athletic.
He's an explosive receiver who takes advantage of an unparalleled combination of height, size, and speed.
In a league where you have a lot of great athletes, he stands out as being probably the best athlete on the field at all times.
He has sort of the athleticism and the footwork and the body control of a good basketball player, and he has the field vision of a quarterback.
Most people would remember Terrell Pryor from his days at Ohio State as a quarterback.
Spent 3 years bouncing around, trying out, getting cut from nearly a quarter of the league, comes to Cleveland, becomes a receiver. He's the best receiver on a team that drafted 5 receivers this spring.
He's going to eclipse 1,000 yards. He's going to come near 100 catches. For a first season guy, just learning the position, that's the epitome of a rising star.
One of the most impressive things has been his ability to continue succeeding with as many quarterbacks as he's worked with.
He might be the best quarterback on his own team right now. Until Corey Coleman came back in week 9, he was just getting double-teamed constantly, and yet he's still been able to put up these numbers. It's pretty impressive.
It's hard to really put a cap on what his potential could be. He could be one of the best receivers in the NFL easily.
He's got the tools to do almost anything and the work ethic to make it happen, so I think the sky's the limit for this guy.
Turning to the national championship game, let's welcome in SI senior writer Pete Thamel. And Pete, Lane Kiffin is at the center of some drama. Surprise, surprise. Kiffin was fired as Alabama's offensive coordinator after he had already quit, which is a unique exit even for Kiffin. Nick Saban was very diplomatic in his reasoning, but why do you think Kiffin was dismissed a week before the national championship game?
You know, I think honestly, Maggie, it was a combination of things. I think performance in the Washington game was one of those things, and maybe that was the culmination of little things that Nick thought had added up. I mean, it's certainly a bombshell story for this to drop. 1 week before the national title game. I think some of Kiffin's public comments at media day certainly rankled Saban. I mean, look, he's the anti-distraction guy. And Kiffin is distracted. I mean, he's trying to coach FAU, and getting left at media day, little things like that. There's the Kiffin factor where little stories become big stories, and it seemed like Saban tired of it.
How much did Kiffin's comments made to you while house hunting in Boca Raton for Lane Kiffin? How much do you think that impacted the decision? For example, he said coaching in Tuscaloosa 1 year is like dog years, 1 for every 7. 7 for every 1.
I don't know, Maggie. I don't think you can pinpoint this to one thing. I mean, there's always been a funny relationship between Saban and Kiffin, where Saban has enjoyed the results, and the results have certainly been there, but hasn't always embraced the process to get to those results. And I think this wasn't one thing, one article, one comment, one game. Look, I think if Alabama won 42-0 on Saturday, that this probably wouldn't have happened. I do think there's some performance-based things here, but I do think this snowballed a little bit of a bunch of little things.
What will be the impact of losing Kiffin before the game, specifically on freshman quarterback Jalen Hurts?
Well, I mean, it'll be interesting because ultimately play calling can be a fragile thing. I will say this: I would expect Alabama to run the ball a lot. They obviously were heavily criticized for not running the ball a ton against Washington, even though Bo Scarborough, I think, broke an Alabama bowl record for his performance in that game. But I mean, look, Jalen, if there's a vulnerability that this great Alabama team has, it's that their quarterback is a freshman and he's inexperienced, and he's raw. They are, I think, the 81st passing team in the country this year. So there is some fragility there, and let's be clear, there's some risk on Nick Saban's part in making this move.
Of course, the defensive side of the ball, well, that's where they really shine. Bama's #1 in rushing defense, total defense, and scoring. So what kind of game plan can we expect from Clemson quarterback Deshaun Watson if they're going to avenge last year's loss?
Deshaun Watson lost in the championship game last year, had like a Pantheon all-time great, big game performance. Watson was aces against Ohio State the other night. That was a excellent Ohio State defense. There'll be multiple first-round picks in that secondary. I thought what Clemson did exceptionally well, Maggie, against Ohio State was taking chunks of yardage. They didn't really go over the top a ton. They swung the ball. They probed the defense. They really did a nice job taking what was there and gradually moving the ball down the field, which is something you can do when you have a veteran quarterback.
Okay, give us your pick for the national title game, Pete. Is it going to be Alabama or Clemson?
Maggie, I haven't decided yet. I have not made a pick yet. So I am impromptu going to predict Clemson wins 28-27.
All right. Wow. So a low-scoring game, relatively speaking, and a one-point game. And you believe Clemson's going to win?
I think Clemson's going to win, Maggie. I just jumped out on that ledge.
There you go. We appreciate you making that pick right here exclusively on SI. Now, another program you have written about extensively is Ohio State. So for those who look at the Buckeyes' loss to Clemson, Pete, and believe it shows that Ohio State shouldn't have been in the college football playoff to begin with, what is your response?
I mean, if you really looked at the body of work from Ohio State this year, it was better than the body of work from Penn State, plain and simple. I mean, if it would to jump one over the other would be abandon the whole thought process of the college football playoff and the rankings and all that. So I think people emotionally overreacted to the Big Ten title game, in my opinion, to Penn State. But look, Penn State's a burgeoning juggernaut now. They didn't win last night, but you can't deny the young talent that James Franklin has put together in State College. It is really a program rocketing in the right direction, and we obviously saw that, especially on the offensive side of the ball out in LA last night.
Pete, final one for you, and this one has to do with Chip Kelly. He's been fired by the 49ers. His former employer, Oregon, they've already made their hire at head coach, but do you see Kelly going back to the college ranks, and have you heard any conversations about colleges wanting to bring Kelly in?
Well, our friend and synergy partner Bruce Feldman at Fox just put up an interview with Kelly a little while ago this morning, and Kelly said he's open to anything. He's not limiting himself to just college or to just the NFL, and he's going to open and listen. It would be interesting if a school contemplating a change right now, Maggie, would make one knowing they could get Chip Kelly. Minnesota is vulnerable right now and may open. I can't see Chip Kelly going to coach Minnesota, but I'll say this. Chip Kelly's a darn good coach, and if he comes back in the college game, he is instantly in the pantheon of the best coaches in the game, right there with Saban, Meyer, Harbaugh, etc.
Yeah,
Dabo.
That's pretty attractive considering he would not be put in any big circles like that on the NFL side for sure. Pete Thamel, SI senior writer. Pete, appreciate your opinion. Appreciate your pick for the national championship game. We'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks, Maggie.
Moving back to the NFL, and Black Monday has come and gone. All told, 5 coaches were fired and 1 general manager. So let's welcome in former front office executive Andrew Brandt to talk more about these moves. And Andrew, before we can actually discuss the coaches, I'd love to get your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers. You were with the Packers when the team drafted Rodgers, but is this the best you've ever seen him play?
Yeah, Maggie, I'm biased, so I admit full disclosure there. I was with him 4 years. 3 of those he was backup, and then, of course, the year after the divorce, where he was a first-year starter for the Packers. I think I'm biased, as I said, but I haven't seen anyone play like he is, especially over the past 6 games. How many players say we're going to win all these games and then actually back it up? He's done it. It's so tough for defensive coordinators because despite all his skills with finding receivers, even if you cover all that, he can run, and then, of course, he creates outside the pocket. He's a nightmare for defensive coordinators. So he's playing as well as anyone in the league. The key is whether he can carry the Packers through some very tough teams, starting with the Giants this weekend.
Absolutely. They'll host that game. Now, after the Packers were eliminated from the playoffs last year, people wondered if Green Bay was wasting valuable years of Aaron Rodgers' prime. So what will be the response, Andrew, if they fail to make the Super Bowl this year when Rodgers is playing like the MVP?
Well, as you and I know so well, the Packers are very skeptical of quick fixes, and that, goes back to my time there. It's always been draft and develop, build with what you have, homegrown team. Now, they have added a free agent this year that's made a difference, and his name is Jared Cook. But he was the type of free agent we used to sign, Maggie. He was there after a couple weeks of free agency. You look around and you say, no one's going after this guy. It's a bargain price, and it's a guy who's had success. So maybe there's another Jared Cook out there next year, but don't look for the Packers to be big spenders in free agency. That is not to say the Packers aren't big spenders, because they're one of the highest spending teams in the league. They just do it on their own players. And they have got some homegrown talent that's working out well. I mean, I think you saw the other night, Pro Football Focus had 3 of their 5 offensive linemen rated number 1 at the position. So they're doing well.
Okay, so even if they don't make the Super Bowl, what you're saying is everything will pretty much be status quo in Green Bay when it comes to personnel. Let's talk about coaches, shall we? Because Denver is the one vacancy where the team is still a Super Bowl contender despite Gary Kubiak retiring. Would John Elway be better off hiring a young coordinator, a new blood, if you will, or a person with head coaching experience?
I think we're going to look at the latter here because look at his history. John Fox and Gary Kubiak, both of those fit your different description there with having someone with experience that's ready to take over a team, ready to win. They win the mantle this year of quote unquote best team not in the playoffs. And that's a team that has the same defense that won the Super Bowl. They've just struggled on offense at the quarterback. Even some of their high-priced players like Demaryius Thomas haven't produced. They've got to improve the offensive line, but I would look for a coach that's a ready-to-win-now coach like Elway's history before with Fox and Kubiak, someone who's been there before, who's got a resume to build that's already there.
Yeah, not to put you on the spot, but any names come to mind?
A name we talk about a lot. I don't know if there's a fit there, but I just don't feel like Chip Kelly is going to be shut out again. I just think He's someone that intrigues a lot of people. There's a name to throw out. I don't know if it's a fit in Denver, but I don't think we've seen the last of Chip Kelly coaching the NFL.
Why do you think he would get another shot, Andrew? It clearly didn't work out well in Philadelphia, one and done in San Francisco. Why should a team take another chance on Chip Kelly?
Well, again, you got a guy coming to Philadelphia, taking over a 4-12 team that won 2 seasons, 10 games each, including a playoff appearance. That's quite a resume. Nick Foles' stats, which are one of the greatest seasons in the history of quarterbacks, 2013. That's quite a resume item. I think everyone around the league knows that San Francisco is bereft of talent as much as any team in the league. That's a problem. So maybe he does get another chance. If not, I can see him being a coordinator somewhere, and Denver could be a place for that as well.
Well, let's talk about San Francisco, the team that Chip Kelly is leaving. The owner, Jed York, has had to make a lot of coaching decisions recently, firing Jim Harbaugh, promoting Jim Tomsula, hiring Chip Kelly, firing Chip Kelly. Also in Buffalo, the Pagulas don't appear to be in sync with their general manager, Doug Whaley. Andrew, what can an executive do when the owners are part of the problem?
Yeah, ownership, in my opinion, should let the people do their jobs that they're hired to do. I know they're meddling owners that have been successful, obviously, in Dallas, but this is one where it just seems no one on the same page. When we talk all the time, Maggie, about what it takes for success in the NFL, my answer is always the same. The 3 parts of the football operation working in harmony: coaching, personnel, and contract management. And you see that in teams that have been successful, whether it's, I'm biased, the Packers or the Patriots or teams like the Eagles, that everything's sort of been in concert. And you see teams that have not had that. 2 teams you just mentioned, San Francisco and Buffalo. 2 interesting situations there you mentioned. The GM. The GM is safe, we presume, in Buffalo. The GM is gone in San Francisco. And of all the openings we're talking about, San Francisco is the only one that has a management position open as well. That's going to be intriguing there, because that's where coach and general manager can come in together and you give them a fighting chance, as opposed to what's happened in San Francisco the past few years with disconnect with Harbaugh, with Kelly coming into an existing GM. I look for San Francisco to rebound simply because they're going to have 2 people coming in working together, tied at the hip for the first time in a while.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting considering they're going to need a new quarterback as well. So we're going to stay tuned for what's going on in San Francisco. Andrew Brandt, former front office executive, now contributor to the mmqb.com. We appreciate your perspective, Andrew. Thanks a lot.
Always a pleasure, Maggie.
Thank you. That's going to do it for this Tuesday episode of SI Now. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern with 2-time national champion college football coach Bobby Bowden. Until then, stick with SI.com and don't forget to follow us on Twitter at SI Now Live. Enjoy your Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow.